All right, so we need to continue talking about these different elements here in these standard form categorical propositions, specifically what these quantifiers all, no, and some mean, because at least in a couple instances, they don't exactly or necessarily mean the same thing we might take them to mean in everyday discourse or conversation. So, all SRP means if there are any S's at all, then they will be P's. But the key here is to understand that all SRP does not say that S's, whatever they are, actually exist. It says if they existed, then they would be this. So it doesn't say that S's actually exist. And you might think, well, why are we talking about what exists or what doesn't exist? Well, we can say some things now, given this understanding of the quantifier all, that we might be able to recognize as true, even though whatever we're talking about doesn't necessarily exist. So let me illustrate here. I'll move the slide out of the way. And I can illustrate with a couple examples. Okay, so we can take this sentence, all unicorns are animals. Right? Now, as I told you, by the way, we shifted now from marmots to unicorns as sort of the guiding, the spirit animal of this course. So, all unicorns are animals actually says if there was such a thing as a unicorn, then it would be an animal. It doesn't say unicorns exist. It simply says if there was a unicorn, then it would be an animal. And so we can reflect on, is that true? Now, I assume there aren't any unicorns. I will also add, though, however, that I assume that somebody is working on this, right? Some genetic engineer. I mean, how hard could it be? You got a horse, you take the horn gene from something or other, a narwhal maybe, get them together, and you got a unicorn. I'm sure somebody's working on this, but as far as I know at this point in time, unicorns don't exist. Nonetheless, if there was a unicorn, right, if somehow this happened through genetic engineering, of course it would be an animal. So what that means is that this is true. All unicorns are animals is a true statement because it says if there was a unicorn, then it would be an animal. But interestingly, no unicorns are animals, right? This says there is no such thing that is both a unicorn and an animal. We'll get to the no quantifier in just a minute. I'll bring back that slide. But it says there is no such thing that is a unicorn and an animal. Well, that's true, right? There is no such thing right now that's a unicorn and an animal. And so it is also true. So in some cases, specifically when we're talking about non-existent creatures like this, or things, it can be both true that all unicorns are animals and that no unicorns are animals. And that is due to how we understand the quantifiers involved here, all and then in this case, no. So, to come back to this, right? We've just seen what happens with the quantifier all. But what about the quantifier no? Well, no SRP means, no SRP means that there are no S's at all that are P's, just like we saw. There are no unicorns at all that are animals because why? Unicorns don't exist. So the quantifier no is pretty straightforward, I think. All is a little bit unusual given how we're understanding it here. Finally, quantifier some. So some S are or are not P means there is at least one S that is or is not a P. So in other words, when we say some, we are saying that the subject term, whatever that is, exists. Okay? So to illustrate here some perhaps unusual implications of understanding the word some in this way, right? I'll move the slide out of the way. So we can recognize that it is true that some cats are calicos, right? We know that. At the same time, we can recognize that it's true that some cats are not calicos, so that's also true. However, we say some cats are mammals, we need to think about what this quantifier means. It means there's at least one cat that is a mammal. Is that true? Well, of course, right? Cats exist, and there's at least one of them that's a mammal. We know that all of them are, but it is still true, and this is important, it is still true that some cats are mammals. But then, of course, we also know take the sentence, some cats are not mammals. Well, that's definitely false. Every single cat is a mammal, so it's false that some cats are not mammals. So the curious thing is sometimes with some are and some are not, both claims can be true, but sometimes with some are and then some are not, those two claims there that correspond to one another, we might say, one is true and the other is false. And that simply gets back to what we understand the word some to mean. Okay? So with that, we can go ahead and look at our problem number 2 for the day. This is just at the very end here of section 3.1. And we are given a variety there of standard form categorical propositions. And we are simply asked to identify the quantifier, subject term, copula, and predicate term. So to illustrate here, number 2 says, no stressful jobs are occupations conducive to a healthy lifestyle. So in that case, right, the quantifier is no, the subject term is stressful jobs, the copula is are, and the predicate term is occupations conducive to a healthy lifestyle. Right, so you can just identify those chunks, and even if this were on an exam, as I showed you earlier, just circle the relevant parts and label them appropriately. Okay, jumping down here, I'll do one more of these just to get to the point here, or get to a particular point I want to make. We have, there it is, number 6, excuse me. Number 6 says, some artificial hearts are mechanisms that are prone to failure. Okay, so we can identify the quantifier as some. But then the subject term here, right, we need to be a little careful, right? The subject term is artificial hearts, the copula is are, and the predicate term is mechanisms that are prone to failure, right? So that's the correct breakdown of all those different elements. However, just notice that, of course, the word are appears twice in this sentence, right? Now, we will correctly identify the first instance of the word are as the copula because it is a type of thing to say artificial hearts, right? Artificial hearts are a type of thing. Artificial hearts are mechanisms that. You thought the second R was the copula? Artificial hearts are mechanisms that. That's not a type of thing. And so that would tell us that, oh, the copula must be the first R, and that makes the predicate term mechanisms that are prone to failure, right? So that's how you break that down. So again, you'll be asked to do this on the exam, and I'm going to also ask you to do a few more things with standard form categorical propositions, as we will see when we get to 3.2 right after